Hello and welcome back to the next One Piece review and discussion. Yes, we are hitting these consecutive weeks back to back, and after last week's chapter, I don't know what there is left because what a monumental chapter. I thought we would get a break, to be honest, for us to kind of like cool down, but no, Oda is carrying right along like nothing happened, like he didn't just drop the biggest lore in One Piece in the past 20 plus years. Nope, we carry right on into some more big reveals. Yes, we are about to find out who our mystery man is. And boy, what a delivery. So, without further ado, Chapter 1139, The Mountain Eater. Pretty cool. What a title. We carry on with Yamato's pilgrimage, and not much has changed. We are still looking at who's who, but instead, two captives or two rebels have been brought before him. We don't see who they are, but by their horns and figures, it looks to be Page One and Ulti, and they are being brought in as hostages to who's who is probably going to deal with them in some very macabre way, which is interesting because he doesn't have his knife samurai sword that we've seen him wield. He has a full samurai sword here. So obviously Yamato is probably going to intervene at this point. But interesting where he currently stands against the rest of Toby Roko. I wonder if Black Maria will just show up. But nevertheless, we have a chapter to get into. So, last we left off, we had some of the biggest reveals that we have ever seen. Shamrock had decided to show that his sword has what we believe is the Cerberus fruit inside of it. So, even though it only had the Cerberus title, it probably is the mythical model Cerberus that the sword has, because we saw those black clouds around Cerberus. Pretty strong. Look to have dealt a ton of damage to Loki. So when we jump back to him, it's going to be interesting to see what state he's being left in. But they leave Loki, who had declined during the Holy Night, and they're going for a change of tactics, and the plan is to hold the children hostage and force the giants to sort of bend the knee to the government. But Shamrock has decided that one other individual is necessary to carry out this plan, so a third Holy Night is on the way. And more about that very soon. The party who are exploring the castle, who are finding out the history of what happened to the king and Loki and Ja Rule being the only ones to survive. We see as they are talking about this Shanks imposter or someone who looks like Shanks attack them, and they mention like a brother. Luffy talks about the Roger pirates were Shanks's family, and the mystery man is shown again walking towards the castle. So a real big indicator of someone with ties to the Roger Pirates. And then finally, we had the big reveal as Robin read the Harley texts, the mythology that is passed down through Elbaph of three worlds that house different interpretations of who the sun god is. As Robin is reading this, Frankie finds a cultural heritage memorial of a childlike drawing of the three worlds, and it almost broke the internet with all the theories and trying to spot who's what in the picture and the connections and the setup. It was beautiful. So certainly a slight step down this chapter. It's still a great chapter, but you can't compete with something of that caliber, to be fair. So I think Oda's just given us another big reveal now. So we jump back to those in the castle, and they've seemingly left the guards now, or they've at least escorted them out or left them to tend the wounds. because the trio plus Road are exploring more of the castle, trying to find where the key is, the key to Loki's chains. They have no idea. Even Road is like, maybe Ja Rule and some of the other elders know, but it is an unknown amongst most giants where his key is stored because they don't want him getting out. And it is within that discovery that Nami comes upon the throne room. And even like Road is taken aback at first, like, we really shouldn't be going in here. Like, we need permission. Like, this is wrong. He's got a bit of a tentative attitude about this chamber. And when Robin, Nami, and Luffy walk in, they see that pattern left scorched on the ground of that summoning circle left by the Holy Knights. Now, what is interesting is Nami's remark here about she recognizes the symbol from a book she has read, a magic circle of sorts that in some country far away is used to summon demons. So Road and others begin to like immediately start freaking out. Like, is this actually like a summoning circle for a demon? Like, this is way too much. Love that it's like left an imprint, and there's actually a hole in the ceiling, obviously where the lightning struck. So they are really freaked out by this, and the kind of, well, Road specifically, the others aren't. A little bit on edge. Are these intruders still around? And Luffy's kind of scratching his head, realizing he's seen this somewhere recently, but he can't picture where, because obviously we know Luffy's not going to remember everything. It is interesting that at some point he will clock, oh yeah, this is how the 5 elder dudes appeared on Egghead, a matter of days ago at this point. But nevertheless, a giant axe is thrown in the direction of Road, and a voice starts to speak to them about someone who has always wanted to meet you. And at first it's just Road being like, is it the demons? Is it these spirits? Are we going to get possessed? Like, panics. He narrowly avoids this giant axe that is thrown in his direction, and he drops the straw hat. And very nonchalantly, Zoro lands, catches Nami in his sort of grasp, and we see Luffy being like, "Oh, okay, where to now? Like, who was that?" And it is Luffy who spots it is somebody on the throne, like the armrest, who had thrown this weapon, and he's ready to fight as always. And it is revealed through Road that this person is Yarsan, okay, a resident of Elbaph, and we see it is this human, this former pirate who looks very aged, is in that hat and cloak we've seen several times now, and has a very peculiar scar down one side of his face, like just round his eye. And he's like, I sense this really strange haki coming from the castle, but seemingly it's gone now, and I've found you guys. Like, wouldn't you know it? How interesting. And he says, oh, you are the rumors, Straw Hat Luffy, you're the guy who took down Kaido. Like, oh, it's been a long time since I've been to Wano. I'm gonna have to go back and visit. So seemingly holding a lot of presence in this chamber, because we see Road explaining our Yarsan here is someone who is, a pirate or was pirate, has lived here, and Ripley, well, this is Ripley's husband. And Luffy makes the best joke. He's like, oh, you're the father of the big little guy. So he's like, oh, yeah, Colin is obviously his son. Colin is actually 20 now, which is strange. He said obviously he inherited a lot of giant blood from his mum, and he was too big even for me to carry when he was born. And obviously, yeah, Ripley, who is actually around 80. So she is an elder to him. But he's like, it's just not worth it to marry a giant, because obviously I'm the only one who is aging. So we see him explain, he shouts, love is freedom, because Nami is questioning this whole motive behind this. And he says, look, historically, there have been many mixed blood races to have existed. We've got the Buccaneers, the Dosodundas, the Long Limbs, the Wotans. And he says, look, those hybrid races have struggled to survive, but in every era, they have always been those who know how to adapt. So it's interesting. And Zoro questions this man on who actually he is, and he screams the missionary of love. And immediately he goes, oh yeah, Sanji like this dude. Like, I see Sanji being this guy when he's older. So we're drawing parallels here, and you'll find out why in a sec. Because as Luffy and Zoro begin to question this man about this key, he's like, oh, interesting, I love it when trouble is caused by other people. This is a bit fun, but why do you want this key? Do you know the kind of man that Loki is? When the worst happens, what will you do? And Luffy immediately, without hesitation, is like, oh, I'll just beat him up and walk away again. That's fine. And he's like, oh, interesting. In the past, there was that man called Red Hair Shanks, was the only one that was able to capture and stop him. And Luffy and Zoro have now just walked away and are like, oh, like, what powers this dude got then? Like, this Loki must be pretty strong. Like, how much damage would there be, like, if we had a fight? Like, they're really just getting, like, excited now. And this individual begins to have a flashback of a conversation with two individuals. We could see it coming anyway, but we are going to get the reveal. This man is currently talking to Roger in this very shaded backstory, like flashback, and they are warning Roger about some like thing, like being careful, and Roger's like, not a chance. Like, if you want to stop me, you're gonna have to fight me, because like it's not happening. Like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm sick of you warning. And he's like, look, you need to understand the risk, Roger. So this man, being a very close person in relation to the Roger Pirates, and we see that he asked Road to push the throne over. So we jump away for a moment to actually come back to the party where, Usopp, Brook, Jinbei, the rest of them are currently with the other giants. And they are talking about this individual, a man who was a pirate amongst Roger's pirates. An incredibly strong one at that. There were only two pirates of the same caliber. And he's like, someone on par with Rayleigh. And he said, well, obviously, yeah. Have you not heard the story that during one of Roger's treatments, they had to trek into the mountains? And during this time, they were surrounded by enemy pirates. This man single-handedly went out alone with two axes and defeated all of them. But not just defeated all of them, he reshaped the entire mountain range. It was devastated. So they were like, hold up, what? He just cut down everything? And he was like, yeah, he's known as the Mountain Eater for just his sheer force of strength. And even Jinbei's like, oh yeah, that's such a well-known story, He's called the left hand of the Pirate King, like he stood side by side with Silver's Rayleigh. So a lot of information here. We have someone on par with Rayleigh. Who could it possibly be? Well, the final double page of this chapter is none other than the secret chamber where the key is stashed. Nami's excited for this secret room of treasure, which doesn't happen. We see a giant key. And as Luffy gets excited and goes towards it, this mysterious man jumps over to the key, places his hand on it and says, you know what? In other words, not even villains would desire the liberation of Loki. Is this something you really want? And Luffy's like, yeah, of course, what are you on about? And he's like, are you going to try and steal this key? And it jumps back to the village where the party is, and they're like, look, this dude has lived here for 20 years. The legendary figure that stood equal to Roger and Rayleigh, the left hand of the Pirate King. And we see Scopper Gabon holding the key, taunting Luffy, saying, try and steal it from me. And that is where the chapter ends. The reveal of this man with what looks to be a very suspiciously flame scar across his face. But, interesting. Because he seems very strong. And I'm interested what his plan is here, because we know Rayleigh's strong, but even during the Blackbeard moment when he tried to take Boa Hancock, he gave off a lot of hacky yes, but even he admitted, he was like, look, I'm past my prime. If Blackbeard actually wanted to fight, I think I could have lost. Like, it ain't gonna be good. So, interesting to see what Scopper Gabon's power level is going to be at, as he's on equal footing to Rayleigh. Maybe he's like carried on fighting over it because he's obviously on a giant island. Maybe this is just his fun way of training. But very interested. He obviously talked about the hybrid races and is setting up to be quite a formidable foe. But there are two things I do want to mention. We know a Holy Night is on the way. Now, whether this Holy Night will just be able to appear by Shamrock, or whether it has to come through this summoning circle, might be a really fun moment when they show up and Luffy and Scopper Gabon are literally fighting right next to him. Like, that'll be very interesting to see. But even more pressing is the fact that Roger started this story way back when, obviously. And I want to say that it was around the midpoint of this story when Rayleigh showed up. Sabaody went through his training to help Luffy. Round the midpoint. Time skip. Now we're in the end game. And this is when Scopper Gabon shows up. I think this goad is more of I want to test your limits because I've heard a lot about you. And he's going to try and push Luffy to take on more like training, or like really find his way with Gear 5th, because Scopper Gabon, like everyone else in the Roger Pirates, knows what the One Piece is, knows what was there, probably knows the history of this world, and has been waiting here specifically for Luffy to show up. Because there's no chance that Shanks had come to Elbaph many, many times, had not come and seen one of his old crewmates. Not a chance. Unless there was some remarkable way that when he showed up, Scopper Gabon was somewhere else. We've seen him travel around, like he obviously met with Crocus a long time ago. I don't see why Shanks wouldn't have crossed paths with him. And how would Shanks fare in a fight with him? Because this dude, he fought off 100 pirates with just 2 hand axes. So, from my understanding, him, Rayleigh, and Roger are pure hacky, maybe conquerors hacky dudes. Like, they are not devil fruit users. They know the risk, they know what the problem's going to become. Instead, they've trained on just sheer power alone. So, I'm very interested to see what he's actually going to achieve. Will the Zorro just get involved as well, or will he have to sit back? Very interesting. But we do have a break next week. Oda has written enough monumental chapters that he deserves a break. So we will reconvene in a week's time. But that brings us to the end. Thank you very so much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.